All right, good evening. October, October 2nd. I'm going to do a quick video about autism and basically why your kid might not be autistic at all. And we need to get to the bottom of it to help your kiddo out as best as possible. I did have another video I did this morning. It was about the terrible events in Las Vegas. I'm not gonna post that one. I'm gonna wait for that to develop. We often see so much misinformation out within the first 48 hours that I kind of want to let the smoke clear and see what I can discern between fact and fiction about what that is, if there's agenda behind it, over the agenda of this individual. We see that a lot of times in these shootings that what is readily apparent is not the entire story. So obviously, heart goes out to all the people who were affected by this. It's terrible, but I'm going to reserve anything further on that until I get some more information, and probably do something like Thursday or Friday after I have a chance to digest and see what's going on there. But today we're going to talk a little bit about autism spectrum disorder and what your kid might actually be suffering from. Because what we had is we had autism, right? And then we had Asperger's, and we had these other little subgroups. They were all kind of floating around each other and pretty targeted. And then more and more kids started having these behaviors that weren't all like what would be a textbook person in one of those little categories. So they broadened everything to autism spectrum disorder, and I think a lot of that is so that they can envelope services without actually knowing what's going on. They just put them on the spectrum, and then they can get funding, and then they can start their therapies. And the therapies are great. I'm not shooting any of the therapies down. Our son does a lot of them. They can be very positive. But you cannot have these therapies if the underlying issue is not at least being worked on. So let's talk about some of those underlying issues. Not that you can't have those services, just you're not going to get that much out of those services, right? So inflammation, we've talked about inflammation. Inflammation can be caused by many things. A lot of times your kid might just probably have gut dysbiosis, which basically excuse me, I got a dry throat again, is negative bacteria that is overgrowth and overpowered the positive bacteria, and this could be from a lot of different reasons, but it doesn't allow nutrient absorption as well as it should, impairs development. You get inflamed spinal column, and so the brain fog and the ADHD and the lack of being able to concentrate and sit, be present, and process information the way that what would be typically developing kid would be able to do. So you can certainly get that issue if mom had a C-section and IV antibiotics. Kid had a dose of antibiotics in the first 2 years of life. Could really impair the ability of the gut to develop correctly, and thus leading to a lot of these issues, especially if they're eating a crappy diet. Yeast, so this could allow for yeast overgrowth. So antibiotics don't kill yeast, so it's kind of like, okay, the good bacteria the the good bacteria and the bad bacteria in the gut just got annihilated, and the yeast has a chance to really flare up. And I'll just go over a couple of these behaviors that signs of yeast issues, right? And they're going to sound pretty typical autism spectrum behaviors. So stimming, hands over ears, aggressive, non-compliant, demanding, chewing on everything and anything, teeth grinding, laughing for no reason, climbing all over, standing on the head or hanging upside down all the time, brain fog, giddy, supercilious behaviors, loss of energy, kind of seeming out of it, and craving for bread, pasta, and sweets. So yeast feeds on sugar. That's why it's very important to never let your kid have a very high sugar diet. And unfortunately, most kids' products are loaded with sugar. So you really need to do the best you can to throw all the refined crap out of your house. You have to do it. one thing, if as a caregiver or a parent of somebody on the spectrum, you are with them day in and day out. So the decisions you make as the caregiver are going to be way more impactful than the 3, 4, 5, 10 hours a week that he's with a specialist or she's with a specialist. So you might send them off to there to get, that's like refinement work, in my opinion. They're teaching them skills that maybe you don't have, or you don't have the time to implement, or the tools, know how to implement. So you're sending them to them for that refinement work. But the overall healing process has to happen at home. So as the parent or caregiver of one of these kids, it's your job to even just play process of elimination. Even if you're just going off guesswork, you read, you gain information, you do process of elimination at home as best you can. If you have to do blood tests, urine analysis, stool samples, then you do that. It's all stuff we've gone through. But it is your job to see that through. So some more issues. Your child could have Lyme disease. It's much more prevalent. I've done a little video on Lyme, and I've encouraged people to check out LymeDisease.org. That's a beast. Beats the immune system up pretty good and allows other viruses and bacteria to kind of take hold because your immune system is on overdrive. And a lot of times with Lyme disease, and sometimes your immune system doesn't even know it's there, which we've talked about as well. So, that's a big one and probably one of the hardest to recover from, just because first you have to go through kind of a grueling process just to find out if you actually have it, and that is very time consuming, but maybe very necessary for you out there to help your kiddo out. So pandas is another one. There's varying degrees of viruses, and those put the immune system in overdrive, cause autoimmune disorders, and there's a lot more viruses out there and bacteria out there than you think that really, parasites in the intestine, all these things can certainly trigger some of these behaviors, both severe all the way down to moderate to mild autism spectrum, typical autism spectrum behaviors. So these all can cause the inflammation in the brain and the inability for kids to regulate themselves, and all that we see when we're dealing with our kiddos. So a misguided immune response can cause impacts like brain development, behavior, mood, weird skin rashes, digestion, immune function, obviously, and sleep. So we've come a long way with getting our kiddo to sleep through the night better. Rarely does he. The only time he really wakes up is if he's kind of half out of it and sees one of us is not there with him, then he runs to wherever we're sleeping. But other than that, he sleeps well, and he sleeps through the night, and he falls asleep right away. Another issue you'll often these kiddos see is constipation or diarrhea. That kind of goes back to the gut dysbiosis, not having proper microflora, which most of us don't. So you can almost say that's a guarantee. If your kiddo's on the spectrum, their gut needs to be addressed. Now, more things might need to be addressed besides just their gut, like some of these viruses and things that I've mentioned. But without question, 95% of the time, obviously I'm not a specialist or a doctor, but all the stuff that I've read, the gut's first and foremost. Everything kind of, think of the gut as like the sun in the universe. it all is kind of anchored there. So you need to branch out from there, work your way in from the gut, and work your way out when trying to heal these kids. See if there's anything else here that I feel pertinent to put on there. I'm going to put a link to, this is a good site. I haven't been on here too much, just, I found it recently as I was just scrolling through some articles, but I'll post it up there because if this stuff's new to you, I think this gives you just a little bit of an aha, like, okay, that could certainly be this, because that's something, I don't think that's it, because maybe only one or two of those apply, so it could give you a good starting point, right? Especially with yeast. I think yeast is a big one. We try not to give our son any grains other than rice, organic brown rice. I found these little English muffins, seeds of life, or Seeds for Life. Can't remember the brand. They're pretty common in health food stores, but but they're an English muffin that's, gluten-free, wheat-free, all that stuff. But his behavior started, he was getting those like 3 or 4 times a week in the morning, just as like a new food for breakfast. And his behaviors started pretty, I don't want to say severely, but they certainly was an uptick in a lot of these autism spectrum type behaviors that we had really suppressed pretty good. So you live and learn, and you're going to make mistakes. All you can do is learn from, right? None of us, if we all had the answers, we would just go out there and cure our child and get them back on the right track and give them a chance for normal life, just like that. But we're not. Every kiddo's different. We're all very different. We're very complex biological creatures, and all of us are going to have varying degrees of issues, and we just have to treat each kid on an individual basis and try to gain research and knowledge and cues from those who have done research and those who have helped treat their kid and those that are having success doing something. It's a huge trial and error game that's going to take a long time, but it's up to us to give them a chance to fight and have a normal life. I think every kid or every parent that has a kid on the spectrum, if you ask them, what would you see as like the ideal scenario? I think all of them would probably say that, he can be an independent, or she can be an independent, healthy, fully functioning adult that can live life to the, fullest realistic degree, right? So they don't have to live with the parents for the rest of their life, and they're able to hold a job and all that kind of stuff. So it is a marathon, and we just got to do what we can do and not get wore down and stick with it. So if your kid has an autism spectrum diagnosis, don't think that is something that's set in stone that they're going to have to deal with the rest of their life. Because in most cases, I would say it's not. You've seen a giant uptick in what it would be considered cases of autism, but a lot of them, I would say, are definitely curable, and it starts at home, and it starts with diet and supplementation and getting that body back, the microbiome in the gut back to a more efficient functioning stage, so that you kind of are building a base in which you can continue to build upon as you go through these kind of this kind of process of elimination. And I wish all of you the best, because these kiddos, they deserve more, they deserve better, and we need to get them there. So that's it for this evening. I apologize, I'm kind of tired and I'm slurring my words a little bit here tonight, but been a long day. So I will talk to you guys again soon. Thank you.